Padma Bhushan Professor Raj Reddy, Turing Award winner, pioneer of artificial intelligence, founder of the Robotics Center at Carnegie Mellon University, founder of IIIT Hyderabad, founder of the Rajiv Gandhi Universities of Knowledge Technologies, the man who dreams technology for social good. What motivated you and keeps you going now?
I was a graduate student at, in those days, it used to be called Guindy Engineering College. It's part of the Alumni University now. And at that time, we had no guides, nobody to tell us what we should do. In any case, there was no computers or computer science in the mid-50s. They were just coming out internationally. So I ended up doing civil engineering. Then three of us, two of my classmates and me, went to Australia as exchange interns. And we didn't know what we were getting into. And then anyway, so I was a civil engineering intern. And from there I went to University of New South Wales in Sydney. At that point, I was working in Melbourne, and my boss said, "Oh, you're going to University of New South Wales. They just got a computer. It was in the news. It was one of the most expensive things they bought, many millions of dollars or pounds in Australia at the time." I didn't know what a computer was. I never saw one. So when I went there as a graduate student to do MTech in civil engineering, my advisor turned out to be a person who used computers for civil engineering research. And the first day when I went there, he said, "Oh, I'm going to the computer center. You want to come along?" If I hadn't heard the word computer the previous week when I was leaving, I may not have understood what the hell he was talking about. Or maybe I would have said, "No, I think I'll go watch a movie or something." Instead, I said, "Sure, I'll come along." And that's the beginning of a journey. The computer I was using was designed by Alan Turing. This machine was called ACE, a computing engine. This is DUCE. This was the next generation ACE, designed and manufactured by English Electric. And it was the size of this room, huge, big and noisy, and had a display and all the other things. So he started programming. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Let me explain what I'm doing. I'm going to multiply these two matrices and put it here and then do this next step." And then he took me through the whole program. That's how I learned how to program. It turned out the language we were using for that time, this was 1958, 57, 58. It's a high-level programming language. It only had one data structure, matrix. Everything had to be a matrix. Even if you wanted to multiply 7 by 3, you had to make 7 into a matrix and 3 into a matrix and multiply it. When I graduated, I didn't want to do civil engineering. So I applied to IBM and some other companies. I also applied for some civil engineering companies. Thankfully, they didn't give me a job. The IBM gave me some tests and said, "Oh, good, you understand what computers are." They hired me as what they call an applied science representative. And then I worked for IBM for 3 years, introduced some of their early transistorized computers, like 650 and 1401 and so on. And then when the time came to decide what I wanted to do, I could have stayed on in IBM. My cousin had gone to Stanford to do a PhD in silicon semiconductor. And so I said, "What should I do?" He said, "Come and apply here." There was no computer science at that time. So there was a computer science program in mathematics. So I ended up in the math department at Stanford. Made me go through real analysis and complex analysis. I said, "I didn't come here to do these things. I just wanted to do computing." So I almost went and joined operations research program, which was more closer to what I wanted to do. But as luck would have it, the first computer science department in the country, in the United States, probably in the world, was formed at that point at Stanford in late in 1964, early 65. I was already, halfway doing the research and so on, and the computing. And so my advisor, I said, I want to do AI already. They said, why AI? Anyway, I became a graduate student in AI. But again, they said, here are all the required courses. You have to do a course in numerical analysis. You have to do a course in programming languages, AI, and whatever. I said, okay, I can do that. But so I had to take a numerical analysis graduate course. I said, I can do it, but I really didn't come here to do that, right? But John McCarthy said, well, if you want a PhD, you better do it. Those are required courses. So I said, I went and did it. And as luck would have it, I got an A+ in that course. Again, while I didn't want to do it, I said, as long as I'm doing it, I might as well do it well, So the head of the department, George Forsyth, was a numerical analyst. He said, why are you doing AI? You should be in numerical analysis. I said, no, thanks. So that's how I ended up being the first PhD in computer science and AI at Stanford in 1966.
What made you go into teaching? And was it something that you always wanted to do?
No. Teaching, I would do it. Again, just like numerical analysis, I knew, you had to do teaching if you're going to be a professor. But mainly I wanted to do research. And because basically what it gives you is the thrill of discovery and invention, doing things that could not be done before.
So how did the Robotics Center at CMU happen, sir?
From Stanford to CMU, we were already doing, AI and robotics and language and all of the things at Stanford AI Labs and computer vision and so on. So I moved some of my laboratory and the students to Carnegie Mellon. And so I was working away. And sometime around 1977, there was a huge hue and cry about Japanese taking over manufacturing. All the US manufacturers were worried that Japan is going to become dominant. And Westinghouse came to CMU, to the president of CMU, and said, we need to do some manufacturing robotics and stuff. Who was one of the founders of AI. I said, Reddy is doing all those things. And so we had a big meeting, and I said, I'm doing it, but I'm a one-man band. If we want to do it right, we should probably have 10 times or 20 times larger activity of different kinds of things. And the president, Dick Side, said, sure, let's start it. And so that we established it.
So what was your motivation when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s?
In 20s, I was clueless. And so when I was 30, I got married just then. And I was clueless again about how to be a good father, a good husband, and so on. 40 was the time, where 43, 44, where we started the Robotics Institute, and then I was also head of the French Centre Montreal. So I said, they wanted me to move there full time. I said, I just started Robotics Institute, I can't move there. So I agreed, I'll go there once a month for a whole week. And I would leave on a Saturday and spend the week and then fly back. And so that was my commuting right between Pittsburgh and Paris for a whole 2-3 years. I was the chief scientist for that center, Centre Mondial. And that was the first time I got any award. It turned out in 1984, President Mitterrand was in US, and he was aware of the work I was doing because he set it up in the Centre Mondial. So he and Jean-Jacques Schreiber, who happened to be in Pittsburgh, so he came to Pittsburgh. He gave me the Legion of Honor medal at that time, and 1984.
You have won so many awards. Which one is the most special to you?
I think probably the most important one, scientific technology point of view, is the Turing Award. From a national perspective, the Padma Bhushan, I got that in 2001, and all the awards, basically for different aspects of the contribution.
Did life change for you after those awards, and how?
It did not. It probably did in other ways that I didn't pay attention to. But at the time they happened, you just say, okay, it happened. But maybe 10, 20 years later, when you see nobody else got those awards, for example, as I know, no other computer scientist has a Legion of Honor award. And probably I was the first Asian to get Turing Award, and probably the only Indian so far. So in that sense, it's kind of good that it happened. At least there's one Indian that's in the world that has gotten Turing Award.
So who were your role models then, and who are your role models now?
The main role models were at Stanford and at Carnegie Mellon, John McCarthy and Alan Noel and Herb Simon at Stanford. They were kind of, you looked up to them and followed them.
What do you think are the major turning points or influences in your life?
The main turning points are my discovery of the computer, because I didn't know it existed even, right? The second turning point was my discovery of the field of computer science, which came at Stanford when we started the field of computer science.
Any disappointments in life, and what are the learnings from them?
I have no disappointments in my technical life, but I have disappointments in my personal life, right? Because I was so busy from the time we got married and I was a PhD student till now, I never spent enough time with my family and my wife and children. So in retrospect, with somebody had given me some proper advice about how to be a good husband, how to be a good father, and how to be a good son, and so on, I would have kind of devoted some more time, or what they call quality time, to the family. Now it's too late.
Yeah. Any observation about the students of different generations?
Students, when they come, they're in search of some new direction or new vision. Luckily, I was able to come up with a set of research problems. I didn't think much about them. I said, wow, this needs to be done, why don't you go do that? And in that sense, it gave them something to work around.
How engaged are you as an alumnus with your alma mater?
Indian Engineering College, reaches out to me routinely, that means every few years. Then immediately I do whatever I can. The same is true with the University of New South Wales. They rediscovered I existed, because what happened was, when I left, that was just, the University of New South Wales was very brand new at that time. They were just started. So 50 years later, they were looking around and they saw one of their graduates was a Turing Award winner and all the other things in the US. So they invited me back. I said, sure, And it turns out, they also gave me an honorary degree at that time. And that was my high school. Again, I don't do that much, but I helped to set up a computer classroom for them.
So any advice for the alumni of IIIT?
The alumnus of IIIT, like any other institution, are the kind of the lifeblood. They create focus because there are now 25 years since their graduation, 20 years since their graduation. They're probably at the age of 45 or 50 at most. And they're going to get more and more senior and occupy more important positions in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that is the time they should see in what ways could you help and impact IIIT, right?
How do you motivate people to move mountains and make it happen?
You need to give them the confidence it can be done. Most people don't start things because they're afraid they're going to fail. And many times they say, well, I don't know how to do that. Recently I was looking at some advances like in natural language, like GPT. I didn't think it could be done. When I worked on speech recognition all my life, and when I stopped working on it, I said, I don't think this problem is going to be solved in my life.
What is it that keeps you awake at night now? Is it any burning problem that you want to solve? Do you still have that?
I do have burning problems, but as usual, they're all just beyond the reach. And in order to go make it happen, I have to kind of build a team. For example, today, the United Nations has things called Sustainable Development Goals. Food security, water security, energy security, shelter, and health, and education. So I think this is a solvable problem. Food, let's take food, water security. The first thing that has to happen is we have to build a map of India, or map of the world, of water security. And what populations, what villages have no water, or very little water, and what villages have, there's no problem. And once you have that map, then you can see how you have to kind of move a water tanker or put a pipeline or whatever to get the water from where it is there and where it's not. And if I wanted an instantaneous map of India of where there is a water scarcity, how do you do that? Turns out it can be done. One is, of course, by putting in various sensors and monitors. And then there's even now a simpler solution, what is called crowdsourcing. You find a person in every village and then have him fill in the form of all the things you want and then submit it at the end of the day. And then you can create a map of water situation in the whole country overnight. And then Prime Minister, head of water policy, I can say, oh, this area seems like there's a big problem. I want to get the water tanks there, or tankers there. And that kind of thing can be done already. Whatever I'm saying about water is also true for food, also true for energy, also true for transportation. Every major basic necessity of humanity, we are at a point where we can know what the situation is and do something about it. So started by Chandrababu Naidu and Chandrasekhar and Rajesh Adani and Srini Raju and Dinesh D'Souza, the head of NASCOM. There are 5 people. It was there, in a gleam in the eye. I may have mentioned the name to Chandrababu Naidu 2 years before, but I don't remember. I don't know what we're talking about. So when they decided to start it, He called me and said, you have to come and become the president. I said, I can't be president. I don't have time. So I said, I'll be the chairman of the county council, but I'll find other people. So the first director, Narendra Huja, I kind of convinced him and said, hey, you've done enough there at UIAC. Why don't you come and run this for a couple of months, a couple of 2 years? He would have stayed longer, but there was some problem with his pension and other things. He was still, not superannuated. So it turned out, in his case, he had to go back for a few more years. And we were fortunate to have Rajiv Sangal and then P.J. Narayanan. That was good. It worked out. We had very good, strong leaders that we needed.
So what is the path that you are showing for the next 25 years for Triple IT?
Triple IT, basically, it's like any other institution, namely, you look back at Oxford and Cambridge, they're 1,000 years old. So how did they, kind of stay alive? The biggest problem would be if Triple IT did not survive. And many of the governmental institutions may survive. They're what we call living dead. They're not doing anything. They're kind of going through motions and dependent on the dole from the government and so on. We're very fortunate to have set up Triple IT as an autonomous institution. And it has to be research intensive. And it has to be able to kind of provide high caliber quality education. And so we had some simple principles saying we're not trying to make money at Triple IT. Like many other colleges, we get donations. The second thing was, we said it was purely merit-based admissions. I had a situation where Chandrababu Naidu's office called and said, you have to admit the following people. I said, I have no authority at all. Not even God can admit, It has to be apply and it has to be, at a acceptable. And same thing happened with YSR, Dr. YSR, next chief minister. He was the one that gave us this whole land. And I went to him and said, this institution is doing well, but we need to own the land so that we can build things, borrow money, build things, and so on. So he said, okay. It took him 6 months for the cabinet to get approval or something. They gave the land for 1 rupee or something. And then it turned out we were having a convocation. He was the chief guest for the convocation. He said, I don't know if you realize, I just, yesterday I signed a paper. I've given you 960 crores. At that time, 1 acre here was 15 crores. I said, thank you very much. But can we sell 1 acre of that land? Because we desperately need some. The same thing happened with YSR. They gave the land. They didn't give the buildings. Then some IAS officer, Bean Company, said, oh, that's our asset. If you want it, you have to pay 10 crores. I said, we don't have 10 crores. So I went back again. And that took them another year or two. But in retrospect, we should have said you keep it, but give it to what Chandrababu Naidu did was, we leased the whole thing for 1 rupee per year, which was essentially gifting to this autonomous institution. So if we had just left it there, right now we pay 2 crores in taxes on those buildings, whole building. Now we would have saved all that money. So we learned some new things. But I think Triple IT has the momentum to become a great institution. And the principles and the leadership and everything.